The House Judiciary Committee went dead silent. Jim Jordan, the Ohio guy who'd been running those meetings for over 10 years, just sat there. His face, normally red with anger during his famous fast-paced questioning, turned pale. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett from Texas held up a stack of papers, her voice cutting through the tension. "Mr. Chairman," she said, clear and strong, "you've been wrong about this law the whole time, and I've got the proof." What happened in the next 20 minutes became the most watched thing in Congress all year. The video got 50 million views in 2 days. News channels replayed it for weeks. And Jim Jordan, who'd built his career on tough legal arguments, suffered a major blow to his political life. But before we get into how a new congresswoman from Dallas took apart one of the most powerful Republicans in the House, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this isn't just politics. It's a masterclass in preparation meeting luck. And if you're watching from Texas, Ohio, or anywhere else in the country, drop your location in the comments. Let's see who's tuning in for this showdown. This wasn't supposed to happen. Jim Jordan called this meeting to grill Attorney General Merrick Garland about what he called the weaponization of the Justice Department. He'd prepped for weeks. His staff had piles of evidence. Fox News had already booked him for 3 primetime slots that night to talk about his expected win. But Jordan made one big mistake. He underestimated Jasmine Crockett. The day started like any other big Judiciary Committee hearing. The cameras were rolling. The audience area was packed with reporters, staff, and people who'd waited in line since dawn to see another Jim Jordan show. Jordan loved these moments. For over a decade, he'd used his spot on the committee to launch fiery attacks on Democrats, challenge witnesses, and create viral moments that'd play on conservative media for days. But as Jasmine Crockett took her seat at 9:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the hearing was set to begin, something seemed different. While other members chatted with aides or scrolled on their phones, Crockett quietly studied a huge stack of papers. She'd gotten to her office at 5 a.m. that morning, rereading legal cases. Her team had worked all night double-checking every reference, every case site, every single detail. "Are you sure about this?" her main aide asked at 7 a.m., eyeing the tough questions she'd lined up. "Jordan thinks I'm green, young, and just a Texan who doesn't know the law," Crockett said. "He's about to find out how wrong he is. To get why this showdown matters, you gotta know who these two are." James Jordan's been in Congress since '07, a former Ohio State wrestling coach. He built his political brand on being a fighter, not just any fighter, but the GOP's go-to guy for attacks. When Republicans wanted someone to go on the offensive during hearings, they called Jordan. His rapid-fire questioning, ability to talk for ages without notes, and willingness to interrupt and challenge anyone made him a conservative media darling. At 60, with 17 years in Congress, he'd never really lost a panel fight, been fact-checked in the moment, or been forced to back down. His YouTube clips got millions of views. His fundraising emails based on those hearing appearances raked in millions. In many ways, he seemed untouchable. Plus, Jordan acted like he was a constitutional expert, even though he never really practiced law. He had a law degree from Capital University Law School but never took the bar. Still, he spoke with total confidence on constitutional issues, court cases, and rulings. Most witnesses didn't challenge him on legal grounds because they figured he knew what he was talking about, being the Judiciary Committee chair and all. Jasmine Crockett was everything Jordan wasn't. At 38, she was a newbie, just elected in 2022. Before D.C., she was a civil rights lawyer in Texas for over a decade. Unlike Jordan, she'd actually practiced law. She'd argued cases in court and won serious civil rights victories, dealing with hostile judges, tough opposing counsel, and seemingly impossible cases. But in D.C., she was new. She didn't have Jordan's seniority, media presence, or huge fundraising machine. What she did have, and what Jordan seemed to ignore, was real legal skill. Crockett went to Rhodes College and then the University of Houston Law Center. More importantly, she'd spent years in courtrooms, not just committee rooms. She knew the difference between political theater and legal reality. And she'd been watching Jordan for months, taking notes every time he bent a rule, twisted a case, or just made up legal ideas that sounded good but weren't true. He's been getting away with it because no one wants to seem like they're attacking him personally, she told her team a week before the hearing. But this isn't personal. It's about the law, and the law matters. The stakes for this hearing couldn't be higher. Jordan called it to challenge how Biden's Justice Department was running things, claiming they were breaking basic rules when going after January 6th defendants. He wanted to show the Department of Justice as a crazy organization targeting conservatives. This would be great for his supporters and potentially awful for Democrats if he could make the accusations stick. But Crockett had done her homework. She checked every example Jordan brought up in his initial letters about the hearing. She verified every rule he mentioned. She got advice from legal scholars, former federal prosecutors, and court experts, and what she found was shocking. Jordan was plain wrong about basic legal ideas, not just a wrong interpretation, but wrong about what the law actually said. The hearing room was set up in its usual semicircle with lawmakers seated. As chairperson with seniority, Jordan sat in the middle, a bit higher than everyone else. Crockett, being new, was near the end of the Democratic side. The setup seemed to point out the power dynamic. Jordan controlled the room from his spot in the center. Crockett was on the fringe. But the setup wouldn't matter for what was about to happen because Crockett had something Jordan didn't expect. She brought evidence. Real copies of the laws Jordan was misinterpreting, screenshots of his social media posts where he made incorrect legal claims, records of his past hearing statements that went against established law. She even had a copy of Black's Law Dictionary, the go-to legal source, with tabs marking the definitions Jordan got wrong. The Spectator area was full of reporters who came expecting another James Jordan show. Conservative news outlets had their cameras ready to record what they thought would be Jordan destroying another Biden administration official. Progressive outlets were there too, hoping to catch a slip-up or something they could use to criticize Jordan. None of them knew what was really about to go down. Right at 10 in the morning, Jordan kicked off the hearing. He was wearing his usual outfit. Light shirt, no jacket, gold tie a bit loose. It was his battle gear, the same thing he wore whenever he planned to go on the offensive. He seemed confident, almost cocky, as he started his opening statement. "Folks," Jordan began, his Ohio accent thick with righteous anger. "We're here today to look at one of the most important issues facing our government, the weaponization of our justice system against political opponents. What we've seen from this administration is crazy. They've broken the First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendments in their eagerness to go after American citizens." He went on for 10 minutes, citing example after example, law after law, basic clause after basic clause. To most viewers, it sounded pretty impressive. Jordan spoke without notes, rattling off legal references like a seasoned prosecutor. He mentioned Supreme Court cases by name. He quoted specific parts of the United States Code. He painted of a Justice Department running wild, carelessly ignoring basic rights. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't impressed. She was scribbling notes, fast and furious, because almost everything Jordan was saying was wrong. Not just politically questionable or open to debate, but factually, legally, provably wrong. He was misinterpreting laws. He was citing cases that said the opposite of what he claimed. He was making up basic legal concepts that just didn't exist. When Jordan finished his opening statement, he looked satisfied. He had delivered his message, set the tone for the hearing, and created the narrative that would dominate conservative media for the next news cycle. Or so he thought. "I now recognize the gentlewoman from primary participant for her opening statement," Jordan said, following protocol. Primary participant Jerry Nadler gave his opening statement defending the Justice Department and countering Jordan's claims. It was a strong response, but it was what everyone expected. Democrats defend Biden. Republicans attack Biden. The same old partisan show that happened in every hearing. But then it was time for member questions. Each member would get 5 minutes to question the witness. It would go back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, with Jordan controlling the order as chairperson. This was where Jordan usually shined, using his 5 minutes to deliver knockout blows to witnesses, creating clips that would go viral on social media. The first few rounds went as expected. Republicans attacked, Democrats defended. The witness, a deputy assistant attorney general, held his own, but didn't score any particularly memorable points. The hearing was following its predictable script. Then it was Jasmine Crockett's turn. Okay, Mr. Chair, Congresswoman Crockett began in a calm, expert tone. She adjusted her mic and showed her notes. Before I start questioning the witness, I need to ask about something that's been bothering me this session. Mr. Chair, in your opening statement, you made some claims about basic laws that I found interesting. Jordan looked up, annoyed at the interruption. The Congresswoman from Texas has 5 minutes to question the witness, he said, trying to get things back on track. Oh, I'll get to the witness, Mr. Chair, Crockett replied with a small smile. But first, I think it's important that this committee works with correct legal info. You mentioned the case of Brandenburg versus Ohio in your opening. Can you tell the committee what year that case was decided? Jordan frowned. This wasn't how hearings usually went. People didn't question the chair. The Congresswoman's time is for questioning the witness, not the chair. He stated, his tone sharp. I'm building a base, Mr. Chair, like any good lawyer would, Crockett replied smoothly. Brandenburg versus Ohio, the case you said supports your view on First Amendment protections for the January 6th defendants. What year was it decided? There was a pause. Jordan's advisor was whispering in his ear. Everyone seemed to hold their breath. 69, Jordan finally answered, acting like he thought the questions were ridiculous. Correct, Crockett stated. And what was the actual ruling in Brandenburg? The Supreme Court decided that speech is protected unless it's meant to cause immediate illegal action, Jordan replied, regaining his confidence. That's a basic legal principle. Close, but not quite right, Mr. Chair, Crockett said, picking up a paper. The real ruling was that speech is protected unless it's meant to cause or create immediate illegal action, and is likely to cause or create that action. You left out a key part, the likely requirement. That's a big difference, Mr. Chair. That's the line between protected and unprotected speech. The room stirred. Reporters started typing on their phones. This wasn't going as planned. Jordan's face began to turn red. The Congresswoman is splitting hairs. No, Mr. Chair. I'm talking about the actual law, Crockett interrupted. Something Jordan wasn't used to. And it matters because you've been misusing Brandenburg to say that all the January 6th defendants are protected by the First Amendment. But Brandenburg requires both intent and likelihood. Many of the January 6th defendants meet both parts of that test, which is why they're being prosecuted. She grabbed another paper. You also mentioned Section 1512 of Title 18 in your opening. You said it requires physical destruction of evidence. Can you show me where in the law it says that? Jordan was clearly angry by now. Madam, this isn't a law school exam. No, it's a committee hearing where we're discussing the law, Crockett replied quickly. And if we're accusing the Justice Department of breaking the law, shouldn't we at least know what the law really says? She held up a copy of the law. Section 1512C of Title 18 says, whoever corruptly obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding, or attempts to do so, shall be fined under this title, or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. No mention of physical destruction needed, Mr. Chair. The law clearly covers interfering with official actions, which is exactly what happened on January 6th. The Democrats on the committee were trying to hide their smiles. The Republicans looked uncomfortable. James Jordan looked like he was about to explode. Besides, Crockett continued, not giving Jordan a chance to respond, you cited United States versus Aguilar and United States versus Nixon, claiming that executive privilege is absolute. But that case says the opposite. Let me quote directly from the Supreme Court's opinion. Neither the doctrine of separation of powers, nor the need for confidentiality of high-level communications without more, can sustain an absolute unqualified presidential privilege of immunity from judicial process under all circumstances. She looked up from the paper. Mr. Chair, that case literally says executive privilege isn't absolute. It's the case that forced President Nixon to hand over the Watergate tapes. How could you cite it for the opposite point? Jordan's advisor was now frantically putting papers in front of him, but Jordan pushed them away. She's taking quotes out of context. Am I? Crockett asked. She pulled out her phone. Here's a message you sent last Tuesday. I quote, "As the Nixon case shows, executive privilege protects presidential communications. Period. That's your message, Mr. Chair. That's not out of context, that's just wrong." The hearing room was now in chaos. Reporters were tweeting the exchange live. C-SPAN's cameras zoomed in on Jordan and Crockett. Republican committee members huddled with their staff. Democrats watched in amazement. "Let's talk about your claims about the Fourth Amendment," Crockett continued, seemingly unaware of the mess around her. "You said the FBI violated the Fourth Amendment by using geofence warrants to identify January 6th participants. But Mr. Chair, are you familiar with the case Carpenter versus United States?" Jordan's jaw tightened. "Of course, I know Carpenter." "Then you know that Carpenter actually created a framework for digital privacy, requiring warrants for certain types of digital tracking. The FBI got warrants, Mr. Chair. They followed Carpenter to the letter. So how is that a Fourth Amendment violation?" "The warrants were too broad," Jordan started. "Based on what legal standard?" Crockett pressed. "Which case sets the standard for breadth in geofence warrants? Because I've looked into this, and courts have consistently upheld properly limited geofence warrants. United States versus Chattree was upheld. United States versus in matter of search of data, stored at Google was upheld with limits. These warrants met those limits." She grabbed another paper. "But here's what really worries me, Mr. Chair. In your letter calling for this hearing, you cited a case called Thompson versus Louisiana. You said it stands for the idea that warrantless searches are always unconstitutional. There's just one problem with that reference." She paused for effect, letting the tension build in the room. "Thompson versus Louisiana doesn't exist." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. "There's Thompson versus Louisiana from 1984 about searches at crime scenes," Crockett continued. "There's Louisiana versus Thompson from 1990 about jury instructions. But there's no case called Thompson versus Louisiana that says what you claimed it says. You made it up." Jordan's face had gone from red to purple. "The Congresswoman is wrong." "Am I?" Crockett pulled out a thick book. "These are the United States reports for the years you cited. Would you like to show me where Thompson versus Louisiana appears? Because I've checked Westlaw, Lexis, Google Scholar, and the Supreme Court's own database. It's not there." Republican Congressman Matthew Gaetz tried to jump to Jordan's defense. "Point of order, Mr. Chair. The Congresswoman's time is up." Crockett glanced at the clock. She still had 30 seconds left, but she wasn't going to argue. She had made her point. "I yield back the rest of my time, but I reserve the right to continue this line of questioning in the next round." The hearing went into a 5-minute recess, supposedly for a bathroom break, but everyone knew it was for Jordan to regroup. Conservative media figures were already on Twitter trying to spin the exchange, but the video was spreading faster than they could react. Crockett destroys Jordan was trending within minutes. When the hearing resumed, Jordan looked like he had been coached by his staff. Crockett wasn't done. When her next opportunity came, she picked up right where she had left off. "Okay, so during the break, it looks like your people gave you some answers to my questions, right? I see you've got some papers there. Want to fix anything you said earlier about the bill?" Jordan's knuckles were white as he gripped his mic. "The lady from Texas seems way more interested in playing law professor than dealing with the real problem of government overreach." "Hold on," Crockett shot back. "I'm super concerned about government overreach. Like when the judiciary chair makes stuff up about the law to push some story. Isn't that a type of overreach too?" She pulled out some papers. "Let's talk about your claims about the 14th Amendment. You said it guarantees a jury trial for all federal defendants. Can you point me to the Supreme Court case that says that?" Jordan shuffled through his stuff. "The 6th Amendment guarantees the right to a jury trial." "That's not what you said, Chair Jordan. You specifically mentioned the 14th Amendment and said all federal defendants. But that's not right, is it? Lewis v. United States says minor offenses with less than 6 months in jail don't require a jury trial. District of Columbia v. Clowens says the same thing. You know this, right? Jordan objected. The January 6th defendants aren't charged with minor offenses. Crockett fired back. Some are. 40% of the January 6th cases are misdemeanors. Parading, demonstrating in the Capitol. Max sentence, 6 months. No jury trial needed. But you've been on Fox News saying they're all being denied their basic right to a jury trial. That's just false, Chair. She held up another document, dated March 15th. You told Tucker Carlson, and I quote, "Every single January 6th defendant is being denied a trial by jury." You said that under oath. So you want to change that statement? The tension in the room was thick. Jordan was trapped. If he admitted he was wrong, it would screw up months of his public statements. If he stuck to his guns, Crockett clearly had more evidence to prove him wrong. I was speaking generally about the serious charges, Jordan started. Crockett pounced. So you were being sloppy with your words when talking about people's basic rights? Doesn't seem responsible for the judiciary, Chair, does it? Rep. Chip Roy tried to jump in. Chair, she's harassing. I'm questioning Repisar Roy. Crockett interrupted. Just like Jordan questions witnesses, except I'm using real facts and laws, not made-up stuff and ignored rules. She turned back to Jordan. Let's look at your statements about the Fifth Amendment. You said January 6th defendants are being forced to incriminate themselves. Can you name one defendant who's been forced to testify against themselves? Jordan flipped through papers. Are you talking about pretrial release conditions that say they can't commit new crimes? Crockett asked, sounding incredulous. Because that's standard in every criminal case in the U.S. United States versus Salerno specifically upheld those conditions. Are you saying that case was wrongly decided? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Chair? Because you've made specific legal claims that are provably false. You've referenced cases that don't exist. You've ignored rules, you've twisted rulings. And you've done all this while accusing the legal system of breaking the law. How can we trust your take on what's legal or illegal when you don't even understand the law? The Democrats on the committee weren't even trying to hide their reactions. Jerry Nadler was openly smirking. Ted Lieu was live tweeting the whole thing. Even some Republicans looked uncomfortable with how badly this was going for their chair. Jordan tried one last counterattack. The lady may have her law degree, but I've been on this committee for 17 years. Crockett cut him off. 17 years of making inaccurate legal arguments. 17 years of misinterpreting cases. 17 years of misleading Americans about what the law actually says. That doesn't make you right, Chair. It just means you've been wrong for a really long time. She pulled out one last paper. I've got a letter here signed by 47 law professors from across the political spectrum, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. They've looked at your statements about the January 6th cases in the law. Want me to read their conclusion? Jordan said nothing, his face frozen. They say, and I quote, Chair Jordan's statements about the law concerning the January 6th cases show a basic misunderstanding of fundamental legal concepts and Supreme Court precedent. His claims wouldn't pass a first-year law school exam. 47 professors chair, including 3 who clerked for conservative Supreme Court justices. The hearing room erupted. Reporters gasped. Republican staffers scrambled in and out, probably trying to figure out how to respond. Democrats were struggling not to cheer, but Jasmine Crockett wasn't done yet. She had saved her most devastating piece of info for last. Chair, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. There's one more thing we need to cover. You've presented yourself as a legal expert. You've made legal arguments on national TV. You've accused others of breaking the law. But there's something the American people should know. She paused, making sure every mic in the room was focused on her. You've never practiced law. You've never taken the bar exam. You've never represented a client. You've never argued a case in court. Is that right? Jordan's answer was barely audible. I have a law degree from Capital University Law School. Yes, Crockett acknowledged. Graduated in 2001, but you never took the bar exam, did you? It's not required to serve in Congress. No, it's not, Crockett agreed. But it is required to actually understand how law works in practice, not just in theory. And that's the problem, Chair. You treat law like it's a political talking point, not like it's the foundation of our government. She stood up, something committee members rarely did during hearings. I've practiced law for 15 years. I've been in courtrooms, I've argued before judges. I've had to truly understand what the law says because my clients' lives depended on it. When I cited a case, if I got it wrong, people could go to jail. When I quoted a statute, if I misinterpreted it, families could be ruined. She looked directly at Jordan. Oh, you can make up cases. You can twist rules. You can mislead the American people about their basic rights, and there are no consequences. Until now. She sat back down and pulled out her phone. Chair, are you aware that making false statements to Congress is a federal crime under Section 1001 of Title 18 of the U.S. Code? The color drained from Jordan's face. Now, I'm not saying you've committed a crime, Crockett continued carefully. But you have made multiple false statements about the law in official committee proceedings. You've presented letters with incorrect legal citations. You've entered documents into the record that include made-up cases. At the very least, that's a serious ethics violation. At most. She let the suggestion hang in the air. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the House Ethics Committee, she announced, along with all the documents I've presented today. 43 false or misleading statements about the law, 16 ignored statutes, 9 cases cited incorrectly, and 1 entirely invented case reference. The Republican side of the committee was in complete panic mode. James Jordan looked like he'd been punched. His lips were opening and closing, but no words were coming out. But here's what really matters, Chair, Crockett went on, her voice now softer but no less devastating. This isn't about embarrassing you. This is about the integrity of this institution. When the Judiciary Committee makes legal arguments, the American people should be able to trust that those arguments are based on real law, not fiction. When we accuse law enforcement of wrongdoing, it should be based on actual violations, not fabricated legal theories. She turned to address the mics directly. To the Americans watching this, you deserve better. You deserve leaders who tell you the truth about the law, even when that truth is uncomfortable. You deserve a Judiciary Committee that actually understands the legal system. She pulled out one final paper. Chair, I have here a proposed resolution. It calls for mandatory ongoing legal training for all members of the Judiciary Committee. 4 hours each month, taught by actual legal scholars on basic legal principles and statutory interpretation. Will you support this resolution? Jordan finally found his voice, though it was weak and shaky. That's not how Congress works. No, Chair, Crockett replied. That's not how Congress has worked. But maybe it's how it should work. Maybe members of the Judiciary Committee should actually understand the law before they lecture about it on national TV. The witness, the Deputy Attorney General, who'd been ignored through all of this, finally spoke up. If I may, Representative Crockett, I want to thank you for explaining the actual law. The Justice Department has been frustrated by the misrepresentations of our work, and your corrections are appreciated. This triggered a reaction from Jordan. The witness isn't here to comment. Neither is the chair, Crockett snapped back, but you've spent 17 years commenting on law you don't understand. At least the witness actually knows what he's talking about. Representative Adam Schiff, who had been watching the whole exchange with barely concealed amazement, asked for recognition.